Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Spare Room Podcast. I'm Brian Bauer. I'm going to be your host for this evening. This is our pilot episode of the Spare Room Podcast, so we'll see how this goes and how this plays out in the future. To let you know, we call it the Spare Room Podcast because we are shooting from the spare room in my house, not a podcast studio, just a spare room that we have turned into the podcast studio. So we'll see how that plays out for us, how the sound goes, how the camera angles go. There is just one camera right now, but we'll see. I say we, but I am the only one in this room right now, so I do not have a producer or an assistant or a co-producer or any of those things at this point in time. The goal is to eventually have on guests and other speakers, people from the recovery community. Be taking people from the recovery community because the goal of this podcast is to provide hope. We're going to say that. Provide hope. And what is the acronym that we know of HOPE? Hearing other people's experiences. This comes from the recovery world, the addiction world, to just life experiences in general. I say all of that, lead into introducing myself, tell you guys a little bit about me, just the quick snapshot overview. I'm Brian Bauer, like I said. I have been in sobriety, clean and sober off all drugs and alcohol for over the last 13 years. That means that I've not picked up a drug or a drink in that amount of time. As the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous would call it, I have been recovered. The obsession to drink and use drugs has been lifted from my soul. Now, does that mean that I'm an all-around better person and that has not manifested itself in other ways? No, it does not. Right? I still act in addict ways. I still have an addict brain. I still have addict behavior patterns. I still treat people alcoholically without having the alcohol present. Now, what does that say about the disease of addiction and alcoholism? It says a lot in that, we're told that it's the drugs and alcohol that's the problem. Here's the thing. If you don't know much about drugs and alcohol and alcohol are freaking wonderful. They make you feel so good in the moment. And why is that? Because they are the solution. We have a problem. We have a problem, an internal problem that cannot be solved in the toolbox of what we have at some point in our life. So we find something that is a solution to the immediate problems that we are having. Some people, it's different things. But for us, in the addiction world, it's drugs and alcohol, and we love that shit, and we ride it out as long as it will take us. As long as it's working as the solution, it works as the solution until eventually it doesn't, right? Until eventually it doesn't. But does that mean that the drugs and alcohol were ever the problem? No. They were the inanimate object. They were the solution, but they were also an inanimate object that we used to solve whatever the problems we were facing. Now, what are the problems that I was facing? For me, you know what it is? The problem is right here. The problem is the 6 inches between my ears. That's the problem. The problem isn't the drugs and alcohol. The drugs and alcohol are the solution, so they can't be the problem if they're the solution. The problem and the solution cannot be the same thing. The problem is what's in between here, between that 6 inches. The solution was the drink. The solution was picking up the bottle. And I did that for a long time. I did that for well over a decade of my life. Probably 12, 13 years-ish, 12 years. Teenager to, I got sober at 28. I'm now 42. Almost 42. I say 42. I'm 41. I don't even know how old I am. Holy cow. I'm on my way to being 42 though. Feel good, look good. That's what sobriety does, right? I was looking awful old at 28. Looking pretty good back again at 42. So feeling good, looking good. We're on the right track. But backtracking. The problem was in here. So how do I fix that? I had to do a lot of work over a long period of time. There wasn't a quick fix. I couldn't get that same dopamine hit that I could get from the drugs and alcohol. It wasn't there. I couldn't find it. I couldn't go take another pill, right? People talk about one of these sayings is if they ever come out with a pill for addiction. Funny thing is, I actually heard somebody say this at a conference before, that they were coming out with a cure for addiction. And the inside joke in the rooms of 12-step is, well, I'll take 2 then. It doesn't matter what it is. as addicts, we're going to want more. In my sobriety, if you will, what's that done? That same addict behavior, until I cleaned up what's in here, that same addict behavior just shifts to another category. It's food, it's exercise, it's women, it's money, it's power, it's success, it's this thing, it's that thing, it's materialism, it's hedonism, it's whatever it is. It's the internet, it's social media. In our society, the drugs and alcohol get the I can't even say the freaking word. Romanticization. Is that a word? I don't know. As you can tell, I'm really not overall that smart sometimes, but I figured some shit out. But drugs and alcohol get that. They get glorified. Let's just use the word glorified instead. The drugs and alcohol get glorified in our society, but we don't look at all the other things that other people use in the same way. How many people are out there living these double lives? They're just down this rabbit hole of pornography and crazy sex and it leads to these altered lifestyles and it's hidden and it's damaging to them. And it might be could be hurting them physically, but it's probably hurting them emotionally and spiritually. It's probably hurting their relationships. But because they're not putting a needle in their arm, or you don't see them with a bottle on the couch or on the sidewalk or holding a sign, we're not looking at it the same way. Right? You see, we have a society of addicts, and they're not all addicts to fentanyl and meth and alcohol and weed. And we got a society of addicts, man. This is a cultural thing on a major level, and we're not talking about real solution. I say all that to say this is what I'm trying to do here, right? This is what I'm trying to do on this podcast, on this platform. I don't know where it goes. I don't know who hears it. I don't know who needs to hear it. I don't know. I don't know. We're going to find out, though. We're going to find out, I've got a chance to speak at a few conferences in some different places, and I was able to do a TEDx talk this last year. So we're getting into the realm of public speaking, and if we really think about it, though, what this is, I've kind of gone back and forth with what this is and why I've chose to do a podcast right now. And there's been a piece of me that's actually struggled a bit with it. And it comes from that addict side and a little bit of these things. And, it comes from all this personal work that I've done about my pride and my ego and all these things. And one of these things is, I run this nonprofit now and it's based around addiction or substance abuse recovery. And so I live this lifestyle and I run the organization and I'm managing people and I'm kind of removed from the in the weeds type of work anymore. And it's a whole different phase of life that I'm in right now. And I pick up these speaking things and I start to do the podcast. And what this is kind of turning into for me, what I envision it kind of being is like, man, this is, as much as it is giving platforms and interviews and putting stuff out there, this is therapy for me, and you guys just get to hear it. I do go to therapy, just so we're clear on that. I do still have an individual therapist that I run my stuff by, and she's excellent, and I think that everybody should have. It doesn't even have to be a therapist. Some of the stuff that sometimes I just go and vent to her, and I probably could have done that to a sponsor or a brother in AA, but I feel good about that environment and I feel safe in that environment, and it's beneficial. And somebody that's been doing this and working with addicts for 30 some odd years has a good amount of wisdom and a good amount of insight in that. And that's my actual therapy. But then there's this flip side where it's just like, man, at the end of the day, a bunch of stuff just bottles up in me and I stuff it in that little freaking black box deep down, right? And then sometimes I just need an outlet. And if this is that outlet, it's that outlet. So what my disclaimer is going to be in this podcast, in this show, is that I'm probably going to piss some people off at different points in time. Let's just get that out of the way now. Probably a lot of people probably going to say some stupid shit, probably going to say a bunch of stuff that you may or may not agree with. And guess what? That is the beauty of where we live. That is the beauty of this country. It is why I have the poster on the wall behind me of Jesus and the American flag. Now, you may not feel the same way. You may not have the same beliefs I do. You may not like this country that we live in, which is sad in itself, but you may not believe in Jesus. You may not like Jesus. You may not like those for valid reasons, and you may like those because somebody told you not to. You may have grown up in an environment where somebody said that that's bad. At the end of the day, it's all your decision, and that's fine. And if you want to listen, if you want to watch, do, great, love it. If you don't, that's cool too. If you want to hate me, if you want to call me a piece of shit sometimes, I really don't care. Like, I'm past that point of that's the other piece of this podcast and everything else is like, I've gotten to the good place in my life where other people's opinions of me no longer matter. Like, I'm clear on who I am and where I am in my life and what my level of integrity and accountability is and who I surround myself with. And there's only the opinions of a very select few people in my life that I value, right? And that actually carry weight and mean something to me. Other than that, if I'm on here and I'm spouting my mouth off, don't really care. If somebody doesn't like it, not going to hurt my feelings. But feel free to share or comment or talk shit. Like, I love that stuff too. Here's the thing about addiction and recovery and this whole dark realm of society in general. People don't freaking talk about it. Right? People don't talk about the stuff that they need to talk about. So if I say some outlandish shit on the show and it gets people to have a discussion about it, even if the discussion is on how stupid something is that you think that I say and how dumb that, by all means, have the conversation. That's the goal. If you have the conversation, then that's a win in my book. You can have the conversation about how much you hate me, and it's still a win in my book. You can have a conversation about how much you liked it. You can have a conversation that starts a debate between you and somebody else. But it's those discussions that start to morph themselves into a bigger picture, right? Here's the thing that I've realized. We're definitely not, as citizens, in control of anything. We control jack shit when it comes to being able to impact things on a larger scale, right? Like, we can protest, we can vote, we can stage things, we can yell at each other on social media, but we don't have any actual power to change the bigger scale of things, right? We're not overthrowing the government and implementing somebody else. Here's what we can control, though. We can control ourselves. We can control how we interact with the people directly around us in our 6 degrees of separation, right? In our inner circle, inside our household. And that starts with ourselves. You know what I can control? I can control myself and how I react. I can control what I put in my body. I can control what I eat. I can control how much water I get. I can control how much sleep and exercise I get. I can control what I read, what I watch, what I listen to. Are those things advancing my life, or are they taken away? I have the freedom to do those things. And the more I do those things, the more that they manifest on the outside of myself. Then my friends notice, and then my family notices, then my neighbors notice. Then I get to have conversations with those neighbors. And then they do it, and then their circle grows. That's how we start to have impact. That's how we start to make the world a better place. That's how we start to make our society a better place. So that's why I do this. That's where I'm at with this. And a lot of my views on things, I'm sure that people won't like, and that's okay. And a lot they will like. I really hope that things that people like are more than what they don't like. And that people, or if nothing else, that people see and respect the viewpoint. Because I always try and do that. I always see a lot of different things on social media and in the news and all these things. And I try to seek to understand first before myself being understood. And I think that I'm at a place now where I've kind of got to this information overload, right? I've taken in so much from so many different places. And I feel like I've kind of whittled a lot of things down and really got clear on what my opinions are on a lot of things in the world and in recovery and addiction and in the health industry and in life. And I feel that I've got to a really good place with that where now it's time to start putting that out there. And also, that's why I have the platform, is to hear from other people too. And I have such an interest in people's stories and where they come from and what makes them tick and what made them tick in their addiction and what made them switch and what was the thing that got them over the hump and what were the things that kept them going when it got hard in sobriety and how did they get successful in that point when you're starting from ground zero. And these amazing stories of success. It's like when we hear about awareness, a lot of the stuff we hear about awareness is all the death and destruction and all of the negativity and all the stuff that sells in the news, but you don't hear about these stories enough. I'm so blessed and fortunate and grateful and by the glory of God and my faith in Jesus Christ that I'm here today. A lot of my healing that had to happen, going back to the beginning, that had to happen in the 6 inches between my ears was the renewing of my mind, thanks to my faith and my belief in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And you may not believe that, and that's okay. You're still welcome here. You're still welcome to listen, and I'm not going to judge you one way or the other, because prior to a certain point in my recovery, I was not a believer either. And it's one of those things that I have grown into. I don't think that I didn't have some, necessarily. I've had a lot of really wonderful and amazing and difficult and just incredible interactions with God, both through my prayer life and in different points in time. But I was never a believer before, and it took me a lot to start developing that relationship. It wasn't an overnight thing. And I think that's what people think is like Jesus is this genie in a bottle. Where you say, I'm going to believe in Jesus, and then all of a sudden, I turn my life over to Jesus, and all of a sudden, then everything gets better. I get baptized, and then everything gets better, and it's not. And then it becomes harder, and then there's a process, and then you get tried and tested and worked through, and it's a beautiful ride. And to go through that while getting sober, right? While going through the physical difficulties and transformations of getting clean and sober and detoxing my body and all of these things. And later on, just learning how to have that faith that at the end of my rope, when I've done everything that I can possibly do to make things better and they are not working out, that there is still an answer. And it's been that reliance that's got me through into this point in my life. And I owe that all to Jesus Christ and my faith and my walk in that. And that's not to say that, every day is some linear path to the top and I grow in faith every single day, and it's not. Right? All the time that faith is tested all of the time. And it's tested in my recovery, and it's tested against my sobriety, and it's tested in my family, and it's tested in work, and it's tested in my health, and every time I know that the more difficult things I go through, the more that I will be tested and given later on, but the rewards are so good. And the rewards are so good, and the rewards of sobriety have been so good to me in the long run. Getting drunk and high was always the short game, right? That was always the quick fix. And now it's about playing the long game. It's about playing for the fourth quarter, playing for the overtime, playing for the whole season, and not for that play. If we're going to use sports analogies today, really want to get into going back and forth on talking about what other people's views are on addiction and where that stems from. And if we go trace this back to the beginning of this conversation, is this whole thing was never about the drugs and alcohol. It's interesting to me, right? That's a very interesting thing. The government talks about cracking down on cartels because they're the ones shipping in the fentanyl and the precursors coming from China and all these. And it's inanimate objects. Inanimate objects that when we put them together create such a deadly concoction that has such a detrimental effect on our society. And we blame that and not what the underlying issues are. I love, and we can get into this another day, but Gabor Mate and his theories on, and his studies on trauma and pain, really underlying pain, some pain point being at the main issue, right? We're a society that's in pain for a number of different reasons. There's so many: spiritual, financial, health, economic, safety, security, all of these human needs that are just under attack in our society and needs that aren't being met. And so it leads to this: what is the escape from it? What is the outlet? What is going to make it go away? What is going to just make it a little bit more bearable? And then we have epidemic proportions. And we say, well, we're going to crack down on the drugs coming from these cartels and blah, blah, blah. The demand is still there, man. The demand is still there. Economics 101, dude. If there is a demand for a product, there will always be a supply. And we are a society that has a demand. No matter how broke I was, I always found a way for that. I always found a way for the fix. I can't get past the amount of focus that gets put on the supply chain compared to the demand. It's like, if we fix the demand and everybody has a good life where they have a good job and they can afford a place to live and they're not getting raped in 60% of their income going to fucking taxes, and the government's not just lying to us and pounding us in the ass every other corner that we try and turn, and they're not, and the news isn't just a shit show of negativity. If we fix society and we don't have the demand, then the supply doesn't matter. They could sell it at fucking Walmart at that point. If people aren't demanding it, it doesn't matter anymore. You don't have to have full prisons of people in it. You don't have to have all these kids dying of it. But then it makes you wonder, why haven't we done it? Why haven't we done it? That's the question. And we can follow that question through in a number of different ways moving forward. But that is my main question in all of this is why haven't we done it? We got no problem sending $600 million, almost $1 billion overseas to other countries for wars that don't matter to us, for civilians that don't matter to us, for things that don't affect our economy, for all these things that just printing money recklessly, spending recklessly, dumping our economy, making the dollar worthless, giving people the average age of people trying to buy a first-time home buyer in the United States is nearly 40 years old right now. That is not good. That is not good. You're causing a country to give up. And when people give up because they don't have hope, because you're not sharing stories of success, people aren't hearing success. Success is getting downplayed. It's getting removed. It's getting silenced. It's getting censored. When that goes away, people don't think that there's anything else to do, and then they turn down the dark paths. Drugs, addiction, violence, sex, power, material things, doesn't matter. They turn away from God. They turn away from sobriety. They turn away from working their asses off to be something in life, and they turn into something that God never intended them to be. And I was there, man. I was there. I know that to be true because I was there, And damn near every person that I'm closest with in this life has been there. And it's a reality. It's a real place. The giving up is a real place. And we got to figure out something to do about it. And that is why I started this. The whole point of this, the whole reason that I started it, we got to talk solution, man. We got to talk about finding ways out. We got to hear from people that have done it. And I've done it. Other people I know have done it. A lot of people I know have done it. A lot of people I know have been very successful at it. And a lot of powers that be don't want it to be out there. Let's just be real about that. They don't want it to be out there. And that's why I'm here. I'm here for you guys, here for the people. I care about people. I might have a different approach to how that empathy, to what empathy looks like. You know, people think that empathy is weak, and it's not. Empathy is strong and accountable, and all of these things that have been labeled as toxic. That's actual empathy, because you just care so much about seeing somebody be better, and you know how that they can get there, and they just don't see it yet. And I see that in so many people, and so I know it's possible. But now I guess I've just been rambling for half an hour. So if you were still with me, then congratulations, you made it. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, share. I don't even know how I'm going to get this on a platform yet. So I don't know what platforms it's going to be on. Hopefully I can get a YouTube channel. That'd be cool. A YouTube channel, maybe Spotify. I don't know. I don't know anything about this podcasting life, but I know that when I get on here and just start my ramble, my rant, that it feels better on my insides. That is all I have for this evening. I will see you guys again for episode number 2. I will talk to you again later. Good night, ladies and gents.
Tell me, baby, what's the